Greetings, magical beings. Welcome to my channel. I am Aradia Arcanum, or welcome back to my channel. This is a third video in a series called, titled Back to My Roots. I created this series because I wanted to go back to a lot of the things that helped me build my foundational practice today. And I know a lot of people are like, I want more advanced magic. However, there are so many people that are just beginning this journey. There's always going to be somebody beginning this journey. So ever so often, I feel like I want to go back to sharing some of those things, and I want to share what I started out showing up here with on YouTube. So that's what this is about, right? And even as a advanced practitioner, maybe you can find something that you resonate with and you can add it to your practice. So this video will be about how even to begin, right? How to become a witch, or how to begin your magical practice. And this is something that should have been the start, the #1 video in this series. However, we just this is what we're doing, and it is what it is. So I'm going to be chatting about how I started and going into a lot of what it looked like then and what it looks like now for someone that wants to start. And because it is really different, right? As we evolve, how we tackle things are a lot different. Especially coming from an era of Gen Xer like myself. So I'm going to be chatting about that. I'm going to be talking about the terminology, right? The terminology is a big one that I want to get into, right? Understanding the etymology of certain words and knowing that can help you better inform your practice. So I'm going to get into a bit of that and just share my thoughts on how I started and what I think are guides to help you get started. So grab a seat. This may be a bit chatty. I have my notes here, so I won't forget anything. So let's just begin. When I started, I feel like, on the Golden Girls, when the mother, the oldest one, would go back in 1908 or something like that. But no, it feels like forever ago, and only not because of my age, but only because things have changed so much. And it's not that I claimed to be a practicing witch or claimed my magical practice at such a young age, but like I said, things have changed so much. And Serena Sinclair, she interviewed me. I'm going to put her information in the description of this video. She's a beautiful soul. And over there, I went pretty deep with a lot of things that I have not shared publicly on YouTube about deconstruction and Christianity in my family. So if you want to know more about that, go check that out. But a bit about that. So it took me a long time to get here, right? To get to this place, because I had Christianity was very much embedded into who I was, because I grew up with it since a baby. So, fast forwarding through all of my life up until the point where I had enough. I was in church. I was heavily involved in just Christianity in general. So, there was this, I took a turn. I don't know what happened. It was one of those pivotal moments, in your life. So I left church. I left Christianity. Enough was enough. I was done. And so I went through years of trying, because it was something, it was embedded right into me, right? So it was, it was like something ripped, right? So I had to figure out how to live and, learn who I was without that. So it was years of that, some, tough times, some good times. But at the end of that, I came to a point where I was like, okay, now I want to introduce spirituality back into my life, because while I grew up with Christianity, I am a soul that loves spirituality. So I wanted to find new ways to connect. So that's when it all began. And I did on my own, I did a lot of research and learned some things about different types of spirituality. So I wanted to go deeper and just learn more with people. So I remember it was one day where I was just like, you know what, this doing this alone, I need more. I need to connect. So I remember, and this is for like you old schoolers out there, I remember logging online and looking up, it was this hub of, and I'm trying to remember the name now. I think it was called Witchcraft online. I don't think that is available anymore. They have different online resources, but that was a big one where you go log in, put your location where you want to go, and it'll pull up a list of groups, organizations, and different things in the witchy community. So I found a coven that just so happened, this is the synchronicities, this is how I knew it was meant to be. They were having their monthly meetup on that day that I looked it up. So I got excited, and also a little bit scary, because I still was, breaking away from the Christianity. So I remember saying to my husband, can you come with me? I want to go meet these witches, this coven. And he looked at me like, what? But you know what? He was a little more progressive than I was, right? He wasn't so embedded in Christianity. However, he had something to do and he couldn't come with me. And typically that would have made me say, okay, well, maybe I'll wait and go another time. But I was like, I need to go. I need to do this. So I remember leaving and going to meet them at this tavern. And I remember walking in. I stood at the door for a second, right? I was like, okay, took a deep breath. I walked in and, it was other people in the tavern, but they had like their little section of the tavern, and it's like a couple of them looked up and like turned around and like the spotlight was on me. But, I went in and it was good. It was, we chatted. And after that, it was like all she wrote. Like I remember getting to know the high priestess, and then signing up for the 101, which is like a year and a day. And then after that, I was initiated into the coven. So I spent time in that coven for a few years. I forget, 3-4 years. And after that, I was getting to a point where I was like, okay, this was a good entryway, but I need something more, something different, something darker. So I had that conversation with the high priestess, and I tell the story all the time. It was so, sometimes I could be just so direct because, I don't know if I'm nervous in the moment, but I just was like, you know what, I want to do something darker. I want to go work with Lucifer. And I remember her face. She was very calm and very open. So she was like, I guess she knew, right? She saw that. And so we have a great, we have a relationship till today. So all is good. I departed on good terms, but then that's when I went a little bit deeper in my journey of understanding what magical practices I wanted to work with, because I'm someone that my desire in all of this is to just explore different ways to connect spiritually. I didn't come into this for witchcraft, right? I didn't come into this for magic spells. that was just something that along the way I was like, oh, this is fun. I want to learn to do this. So while I was in the coven, I went, because I felt like I had to play catch up. Or, you know, when you at a round table with a bunch of people that are experienced, you want to be in the conversation also. So I felt like I had to jump into learning all that there was to learn. So I took so many classes. I took 24 symbols, psychic awareness, psychic development, mediumship. I did all the things. Like I started my Reiki journey. Just everything that was available to any metaphysical shops that were hosting courses. I did all of that. So that, accelerated me. And then that's when I left the coven and went a little bit further. So, witchcraft, right, came a bit later, the candles and all of that. But that is how I began my journey into the world of magic. And I want to talk a bit about the terminology. The word witch comes from the Old English term wick, which is the feminine, and wicca, which is the masculine, used in Anglo-Saxon England to refer to someone who practiced sorcery or magical arts. These terms are part of the language spoken during the early medieval period in regions that will later become England. Over time, witch in English became a general term for a practitioner of magic, especially one associated with folk practices, spell work, and interaction with unseen forces. Its meaning shifted heavily during the period of the European witch trials, when it took on darker, more accusatory connotations. In modern usage, the word has been reclaimed by many as a self-identified practitioner of various forms of witchcraft. Today, the word witch is often used as a catch-all label for anyone who practices magic. It gets applied broadly across social media, books, and modern spiritual spaces, almost as if it universally defines all practitioners. That simplification is convenient, but it's not accurate. Historically and culturally, witch is a specific term rooted in European language and experience. It does not translate cleanly across traditions, and many cultures have their own names, roles, and frameworks that don't align. For example, in African American folk traditions like hoodoo, practitioners are not typically called witches. You'll hear terms like conjure worker, root worker, or conjure woman, each pointing to a specific lineage, method, and cultural context. The same applies globally. Different cultures have their own titles, practices, and meanings that don't map onto the European idea of a witch. So, while witch functions today as a broad modern identity, it's more of an umbrella created by contemporary culture than a universal truth. Using it without context can blur important differences between traditions, and in some cases misrepresent them entirely. A more accurate approach is to recognize that witch is one category among many, not a label that defines all forms of magical practice. So with that understanding of the etymology of this word, it might be more accurate when you're starting out on this journey to say, I would like to know what magical practices there are and what I align with, right? What type of magical practitioner am I? Because then this way you have a better understanding of how to be directed instead of the word witch, which has now become this umbrella term and catch-all phrase. So when starting out, I was just, as a beginner, I would look more into what magical practices are there that I am drawn to, that I resonate with, and explore that. And then in that exploration, you may just find out what type of magical practitioner you are. And if you fall under the category correctly as a witch, then that's what you are, right? So the other thing I wanted to talk about, address when you are learning or a beginner on this path, I would say that in the modern day, it is a bit scary, right? Because in the way that this is the age of information, there's so much information out there readily available, right? You look online, you'll find it. You'll find a video, you'll find a book. There's so much information. There's so many people in the age of like social media that are saying this is the way you do it, and another person is saying no, that is not the way that you do it. This is actually the way that you do it. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there because everyone is allowed to share their gnosis. So it can be kind of overwhelming trying to figure out which path to take. You know, this is something that, you know, in my era, growing up, we didn't have this, right? We didn't have all of this information so accessible. So our natural way that we learn is jump in, dive in, explore, and through trial and error. So even though I am in now the age of information, I'm okay with just diving in, trial and error, right? Exploring, getting my hands dirty, because this is the way that I grew up. But not, you know, this is not something that is, you know, this is not the framework now, because everything is available. You don't need to do that. You can read a book and get that information. So in a sense, you know, you're not thinking about trial and error. But I think what can help that is determining first what it is, what magical practice you are drawn to, and then in that arena, do your research. You know, this, in the West, we have this idea of, you know, you're taught when you leave high school, you got to figure out what it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. You got to figure out what career you want to do and be, you know, and learn for the rest of your life. And that is a bit overwhelming, but that is what you're asked as a teen coming out of high school to go into college to learn. And a lot of times what happens is either you don't finish college or you finish and you realize that's not what you really want to get into, and then you have all of these loans. So I feel like that is kind of the way that we are thinking as a beginner, that the thing that you pick is the thing you're stuck with. Right? So that is absolutely not the case. As a matter of fact, in my world, it's quite the opposite, right? That's something you're just learning so that you could get to understand it on, you know, better, to see if that's something that you want to continue to work with. So it's more about exploration instead of this finite idea, right, of this is the thing, right? And even in that, when you dive in, right, because some people like to really dive in and immerse themselves into what it is that they are learning. But you can even, after that, after you soaked up everything from it, if you feel, you know what, this is not something that I feel is a part of my foundational practices, you can completely move on, right? And even if you're someone like me that always announces to the world that this is who I am and what it is that I'm doing, you can even then say, you know what, I'm done with that. I'm moving on to the next current. You don't have to be, there's no rule. You don't have to be afraid of saying, I no longer am this. I'm not a, I don't want to do that anymore. Right. So, you know, I'm a bit of a chaot in that way. I learn something and I move on from it if it's not a part of my foundational practice. Right. Because as a beginner, the idea is you're working on building your foundational practice to understand how it is that you manifest magic, to understand how it is that you connect to spirit. So with that said, the three things, if I had to sum this video up, the three things that I would say really to focus on is, first of all, approach it, right? Understanding what the word witch is, right? And witchcraft. Approach it with the understanding that you're looking to see what you resonate with as a magical practice, right? What type of magical practitioner are you? And then second, you want to, you know, not be afraid to explore, dive in, right? And then third, be okay with saying, all right, I'm over, that's over. That's really not what's a part of my foundation. I learned some things, you know, I'm going to add some of those things. I'm going to take what resonates and leave what doesn't, but this practice as a whole is not a part of my foundation. And I'm going to keep exploring. You know, as human beings, we evolve, and the more we put into our brain grows and it evolves its understanding. We shift our the way that we see things, the more that we learn. So if it's very rare to me, there's your foundational practice, but I feel like more often than not, there are many people that are always exploring and building on their foundational practice, right? It's usually not just, okay, this is it, I'm done, no more research. There's always some more to learn. So this is my suggestion based on my experience in gnosis in the world of magic. I have in the Magic Alchemy Circle over on the school platform. I will put that link in the description of this video, but there's a section there that is begin here, and in that section of the classroom, as a free member, you can look through and kind of get some guidance with that. I have about 7 or 8 magical practices and just a few pointers and 2 or 3 books for each, just as starting points, because there's a plethora of information out there for you to get started. But you can go over there and check that out, because there's like a pathway of that you could take over in the classrooms to get you started in the realm of witchcraft. So go over and check that out. Let me know in the comments if you are an experienced practitioner. How did you get started? Did you have these fears? Are you an OG? And you know, are you like a Gen Xer like me? These blocks or things that we come up against, was it what we had to deal with back then? Or if you're somebody new and this resonates with trying to start your journey. So until the next video, I love you all, and into the shadows.